Hello, my name is Carol May Whittick and welcome to Her Conversations Tools for the Awakening Woman. Her is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. This is the optimal state to embody in order to attract our highest desires. Who is the awakening woman? She is the woman who's seeking a greater possibility in her reality and looking for solutions. She knows being awakened is not a lofty ideal but a necessity. If she can transform herself, she can change the world. Her conversations will introduce you to talented women who will speak to your spirituality, sensuality, soul. They share their stories and explain how they are in service to the world. Let their words and these conversations embolden and inspire you. This week I'm speaking with Esther De Al Ford about her work helping women to heal after they've suffered a sexual trauma. As with most healers, her desire to serve came from her own trauma experience and her subsequent journey back to feeling safe in her own body. Esther candidly shares her story during this episode, and as she talks, we hear about the best things to say to someone who has found the courage to share their story with you, and also find out some of the tools she uses to help her clients heal. My biggest takeaway from this conversation is that it's always about communication. So as always, I start each episode by asking my guest, HER is an acronym for Higher Energetic Resonance. When do you feel at your most HER?
I think I feel at my most HER when I'm doing my work, when I'm in flow, when I'm having those interactions where everything just feels really synchronized and every conversation feels like it's going to lead on to something bigger and more beautiful. And it's like you're almost stood outside of yourself watching as you just completely flow with the universe. I don't, you know what I mean? Like you have those days where you're just like on a cloud, skipping through meadows, everything is beautiful. And it's when I am really showing up in the work that I'm doing and following my Dharma and being in my bliss. That's when I'm at my most HER.
Perfect, thank you. And then so just to find out some more about you and how you got to be doing the work that you're doing now. Everyone has a story. There's like a pivotal moment in their life, or there's an experience that will kind of bring them to then turn it into their service. So what happened on your journey?
Do you want the long version or the short version?
Whichever you think. So we'll see.
I mean, when I was 15, I experienced my sexual trauma. I was raped at a house party by a drug dealer. And trigger warning, by the way, trigger warnings all over the podcast. And I spent most of my mid to late teens trying to find my way back to my body and reclaim this part of myself that felt like it had really been taken from me without my permission. Not physically, but this piece of my soul almost. My sexual power, my joy, my bliss. And I looked in all the places you're told to look. You know, I went to the rape and sexual abuse clinic, and I had my 12 free taxpayer sessions, and then of course mental health issues started to develop, which were initially misdiagnosed as bipolar disorder, but then as soon as I was referred on to a psychiatrist, he said I really had clearly complex post-traumatic stress disorder, or CPTSD, and a few other traumatic things had happened. I had a girlfriend who committed suicide while we were in the early stages of dating, I suppose. And I was, maybe a year after I was raped, I was assaulted again by a partner. I think when you're in the early stages of healing, you put out a really strong, vulnerable energy that people can really easily take advantage of, which is possibly one of the reasons a lot of people find themselves experiencing multiple traumas. And yeah, I had counselling, I was put on medication for panic attacks and anxiety. I tried lots of different mindfulness techniques. They all felt a bit shallow. I don't know whether that's because I just didn't really have the tools to use them properly. And the people who were teaching me them didn't have the tools to teach me them properly because they were just social workers in clinics who see 30 people a day. And it wasn't good enough, really. And I found myself, I tried all the therapies. My mum knew a shaman lady. She's like shaking maracas over the phone to me because she lives in New Zealand, and I'm like, ah, and and then I tried theta healing, which was amazing. But everything felt very much like the power was placed outside of myself. Nothing felt like it was empowering me to take control of my life, reclaim my body. And because my rape had happened when I was 15, I was still at that age where everyone's telling you that you don't get to have sexuality, you don't get to be a sexual being and have a positive relationship with your sexuality. So I didn't really have an outlet with which to kind of find a new relationship with my body. At least those tools weren't freely available to me. I'd had this really traumatic thing divorce me from my body and my sexuality, but because I was under 18, no one's there providing me with any tools to get back to myself, I suppose. And I found myself in BDSM clubs, at kink events, and eventually started working as a lap dancer in a strip club. I think partly because I was just curious about the industry, and also partly because I felt like I really wanted to take back my body in a really loud way. And women who got to dress the way they wanted to dress and were paid to dance seductively without being touched and only being seen on their terms, that seemed like sexual empowerment to me when I was 18. And I think now looking back, I was in that hypersexual stage of healing where you just kind of throw yourself into sex because you think, well, if I'm having sex, then I must be fine. I must have fixed myself, which wasn't the case. I had a lot of very dysfunctional relationships, and oddly enough, dancing did become the catalyst for me creating a new positive relationship with my body. It became this place where my body was a symbol of abundance and financial prosperity and independence and freedom of expression. And the attachments of this skin is something to be ashamed of, this skin is something that's caused me pain, they started to kind of flake away gradually. And then after 6 months, I think, I decided to start using the money that I was making as a dancer to pay for my therapy training, because I don't think I knew quite where I was going to go with it at the time, but there was definitely a nudge of, this is not enough, there has to be something more. The experiences that I'd had felt like they needed to be used in some kind of constructive way, as possibly morbid as that sounds. So I started my clinical hypnotherapy training, and then halfway through that I trained in emotional freedom technique to practitioner level, because I'd used EFT for years. I'd found it incredibly healing, and there are a lot of elements of EFT and hypnotherapy that you see in other therapies that I'd found useful. And I just wanted to really start creating this toolkit of things that I could use, that my friends could take advantage of, and start working towards building something that was more than just dancing naked, I suppose. I had this very clear knowledge that when women are empowered, they're capable of amazing things. And trauma has a way of making women feel smaller than they are. And I felt like if I could find a way to remind other women who'd experienced similar things to me of their power, their sovereignty, their capacity to heal themselves, that they would go on and do amazing things and empower other women. And it was just kind of my way of putting my drop in the pond and seeing how it rippled, I suppose.
And it's amazing the way that you said as well how you were going to, I can't remember the exact phrase that you said, but it was about how you were going to use what happened to you. It's like, what was the purpose of it? You know, it was good that like that kind of came to you, even though the healing might not have come as sooner. At least that kind of in your mind was like, there's got to be a reason for it, so it didn't like crush you immediately, because especially with I suppose with all kinds of traumas, but in particular like sexual traumas, for some people can have such a hold on them that they never find a way of kind of flipping the switch on it and going, okay, this has happened, like I want this to now mean something, and I want to get on, you know, on top of it and push it from behind and let it be the thing that's holding me in holding me back or traumatizing me. And you know, you're talking about giving off that kind of vulnerable essence so that then you get that kind of pariah type relationship or the people that will come into relationship. Did you notice a pattern straight away, or did you how did that kind of, when did that become clear that that's what was happening?
I didn't notice a pattern at all. I think it's only now looking back that I can see that that's what had happened. I think it's really important to mention that it was definitely not straight away that I felt that what happened to me was something that I could use as positive momentum for change, from probably the age of 15 to until I started dancing, really. So 15 to 18 was just a period of very toxic relationships and being very in victim, which was important because I needed to acknowledge and validate that something awful had happened. A lot of people tried to hurry me through that process by saying, well, you know, it was only a few minutes of your life, don't let it take over. This, you know, worse things happen. I remember when I was this age and this awful thing happened to me, and I feel very lucky that a very clear part of me was like, no, I get to be in this place. I get to feel this. This was not okay. And that was that I was beating the drum of this was not okay way before #MeToo, way before anyone was awake to this stuff. You know, all my friends abandoned me at the time. Obviously, like the friends you have when you're 15, they're not the friends you have when you're in your 20s. So now I'm like, it's cool. I've lost nothing. But it was not immediately a positive shift. And I think when you're really poorly, you can attract people who are really poorly into your life. And I say really poorly because even though it was PTSD, it was still a mental health issue, and my mind was very much unhappy. And so I think I looked for people who were vulnerable because it made me feel validated, and people who are vulnerable saw me and were validated by me. And so even if maybe there wasn't a direct purposeful predatoriness to the people who were coming into my life via intimate relationships, because of where we were at and how we were on the level we were connecting, it was pretty much impossible that we wouldn't leave the relationship without hurting each other in some way. And so I was sexually assaulted again by a partner, and I entered into a polyamorous relationship with a married couple when I was 18, and that was again a kind of, they were trying to fix their marriage by bringing someone else in, and I was just desperate for some kind of place that felt safe, that felt sexually liberated, that felt like I was going to be protected from the big bad world of nasty men, as my like young self felt at her core. And so I don't think it was necessarily a pattern or I don't think there was ever any negative intent necessarily. I think it was just impossible for me to form healthy relationships when I was still in a really unhealthy relationship with myself.
And you said you lost a lot of like friends, and obviously like when you're 15, like 15-year-old girls, 15-year-old girls really, you know. But what do you think it was about what happened to you that made them just not feel that they could be supportive? Was it just the lack of their emotional strength at that age, or because maybe they thought, you know, these myths that you have in your head when you're young, that you means that you can't be supportive sometimes, and especially when we're kind of set up against each other anyway, that doesn't help.
Yeah, we totally are.
Yeah.
I think we are all taught that there is a certain kind of woman who is sexually assaulted or abused or raped or experiences violence, and I'm not sure what kind of woman that is, but all you know and all you hear is that you are not that kind of woman. And it's always a bit of a shock when you find out you are. But yeah, I think it was that I must have been asking for it, that I must have done something to encourage it, that I must have been lying, or I just don't think we had the maturity to deal with the gravity of something like that. And now as an adult looking back, I see it very clearly for what it was, but the people I had around me at the time generally were just not capable of supporting me and didn't have the understanding of this stuff. I think 15-year-olds now will have the capability to be supportive of their female friends and their sisters, because the messaging that we're giving to young people now is very different to the messaging that we were giving young people 10 years ago. But at the time, it was still very much like, this, you know, this happens to you because you didn't do enough to stop it, or because you secretly wanted it.
Or you dressed a certain way, or you looked a certain way, or
I remember like exactly what I was wearing, because I don't own any of those clothes now. I threw them out about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
I had a grey hoodie on. I was going through that grungy stage, you know, where you wear lots of eyeliner and beanie hats. And like a black grey hoodie on, and these like baggy like boyfriend jeans, and my beanie hat, and like some trainers or something.
Were you like an All Saints fan or something? Was that around about that time?
All Saints. And yeah, and I remember, bless him, this is not said with any blame whatsoever on my part, but one of the first things my dad said to me was, "Had you been drinking?" And he would never say that now because of the growth that our family had to go through afterwards, and who I've grown into, and the message that I really strongly support now. But at the time, I lied and I said, no, I hadn't been drinking. And I really wish, looking back, I'd been like, yes, and that's not relevant, and that doesn't make this okay. But I think at the time it was just, you know, he was from that era where I guess those are just the questions you asked, and I think it was almost like he didn't think before he spoke, it just came out on autopilot.
Like you're saying, like, because of all the judgment that people will have, it's like, instead of going, are you okay? And like, you know, it's like, well, what were you wearing? What did you look like? Were you drinking? It's like, did you do anything to kind of...
And we're only just unlearning this narrative now.
Yeah.
So I don't have any, it's not okay, but I don't hold any blame because I know he's just doing the best he could with the information that he had and how he'd been brought up.
And how did the rest of your family react and then come together around this?
I mean, I think we all just did the best we could, which is obviously like code for not great. We all did the best we could.
But then who's ever done it perfectly though, really? Have they? Everyone kind of reacts in the way that they know, with the information and the understanding that they have, and it just kind of turns out as it turns out, and then you kind of iron over. You just kind of keep smoothing the edges as time goes on, and then when everyone's ready they say sorry.
I think, I mean, the answer probably is like, my parents really tried. I grew up in a very holistic household. My mum was on the path and is now an artist who illustrates like tarot decks and stuff. So I was always very much surrounded by alternative therapies and complementary therapies and options for different ways to navigate self-help and be empowered. So there are a lot of different avenues I could have gone down that would not necessarily have been available to me had I not had the family I had. We didn't really navigate the whole 15-year-old daughter being raped thing splendidly, if I'm totally honest. But then whoever has though, I don't know if anyone, because you don't have any like guidebook going up to it. It's like, you're okay, here's like parenting class, and should A, B or C happen, then you kind of go into emergency mode. That's like, you don't prepare for that stuff because these are all the things that happen to other people, so you never have like a routine ready to kind of jump into when that stuff happens. I think it's so, I know I'm going off on a tangent a little bit, but I think it's really strange that in school now, kids are taught, in America, kids are taught how to deal with a terrorist attack on the school. You know, they hide under their chairs and they stay quiet and they figure out which cupboards they're going to run and hide into. But they are less likely to be shot down by a gunman than they are to be raped or sexually abused or be in an abusive relationship or experience intimate partner violence. Why are we preparing our kids for the unlikely event that a terrorist comes into their school, but we aren't preparing them for the very real chance that either they or someone they know is going to experience violence, whether it's physical, emotional, or sexual, and how to deal with that, and what the process would be if that did happen. Like, we don't teach our girls or our boys what the process is in reporting something to the police, how to decide whether to report, what your rights are in reporting. We aren't taught, like, you don't know that you have to put your clothes in a plastic bag. Actually, it's a paper bag because you don't want the moisture from the clothes to get all mildewy and gross. You're meant to put your clothes in a paper bag you're not meant to have a shower, you're not even meant to brush your teeth or have a glass of water, because that can remove DNA. You don't know that unless you Google it, and you don't Google it because you want to have a shower and brush your teeth and cry. You know, it baffles me that we do not prepare young people for these situations
that are happening quite, it's like, because it's so, what is the statistic? Because it's going to be usually, it happens to so many people, and it's usually someone that you know or in your family or anything like that. It's really, really prevalent.
Or a friend or an acquaintance or a family member. It's very rarely the stranger in the alleyway. And so it does seem really strange to me that we don't prepare young people for this stuff when the statistics are so high.
It's interesting. It's good, because I've never really thought of it like that. And like you said, because it, like Armageddon, I mean, like the days that we live in now, but you know what I mean? It's like, you're still more likely to have something like that happen to you or someone that you know. And especially with, the recent Me Too hashtag and the Time's Up movement. And I know not everyone that I know decided that they were going to put something out on social media or whatever, or even talk about it, but more people than I would have even thought of, and people that I've been friends with for years, either online friends or, we kind of meet in social situations, but it's just stuff that it's something that you never really talk about, but you realize it's like probably a good like 30-40% of people that I know kind of raise their hands, and they were the ones that were prepared to do so as well.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because there are still, for all the ones, and the only reason that I really came out was about that was the fact that I was blogging at the time. So I was always trying to blog with something that was really relevant, that was happening either in the outer world or, in the world at large, or something that was happening to me emotionally or growth-wise. And it just kind of tied in with 1 week that I didn't really go into it so much, but it was, it happened on more than one occasion, but the one that really kind of struck with me, or the one that really kind of tied into the whole Harvey Weinstein, it was a Harvey Weinstein type figure. He didn't have as big a he didn't own Miramax or anything like that, but it was someone who had made promises relating to my career at the time, and I was like a kind of fresh young buck from the Midlands down in the big city and everything like that, and this was the person that was guiding me, and then it just kind of went pear-shaped really. But then I know, one, I'm not the only one, because then you've got the gatekeepers of different industries, but then also you've just got general people that are just in your family or put in positions of responsibility that kind of take advantage, or peers and friends and everything like that. I wanted to then find out from you when you actually started to do the work, and how that started for you. What were you doing, one-on-one? Were you doing groups? What was the way that you started?
You mean work on myself or work with other people?
Well, let's talk about yourself, and then when you started working with other people afterwards.
Okay, I mean, so I'm trying to timeline it in my head. So I had counselling with a woman one-on-one counselling with a woman at the Rape and Sexual Abuse Services Centre. And I remember it was in a room called the Sunflower Room, because all the rooms were painted different colours and had different plants and themes to them. And I think I had about 6 sessions with her. I was never given any tools to deal with anything really. It was just talking therapy, and conversations about relationships and sex and panic attacks and flashbacks, and agoraphobia, basically the way my body was presenting the trauma at the time. I had 12 sessions, but I only attended 6, and then I was like, this is just re-traumatizing me. Like, I have to go into this room and talk about this awful thing when I could be going climbing or having a drink with my friends in the sun. You know, it was not moving me anywhere positive. And it was positive in that I was showing up for myself, but I wasn't being given any tools, and I needed real tools to move forward with. And then I had on and off theta healing sessions, long distance, again one-on-one, which were really powerful. I don't know if you're familiar with theta healing.
No, can you go into it a bit? I've heard of it, but I don't know the deep ins and outs of it.
So I'm not sure I know the deep ins and outs of it.
What kind of layman understanding then?
So the way it was used for me was, it was like downloading new belief systems and releasing old negative belief systems that could be brought down through the DNA of your ancestors, or even through from past lives.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a hard stance on either of those things, because I guess I don't feel like I need to. If it works, it works, you know. That was really powerful. I think the belief system work was really powerful. Shedding shame, shedding the belief that as a woman, I would always feel pain, or like deep-seated beliefs that you don't consciously have, but when you look down in your gut, it's just something you've been handed. You know, as soon as you were birthed, as soon as you were born, and the doctor was like, it's a girl, society just gave you this big box of negative belief systems you have to spend your life unpacking. Like, thank you. I'll put it next to my pink baby shoes. So yeah, beliefs like as a woman I will always feel pain, or as a woman I always need to fear men, or my body isn't safe, it's not safe to be in my body. That was a big belief that needed unpacking and releasing, and that took a lot of sessions because I was really clinging to it, because I needed that belief to protect myself. I mean, I can't remember all of them, to be honest. There were so many, but and I remember her saying to me, actually, sorry, I'm rambling a lot. It's weird to go back to, but I remember the woman I was working with saying, I can't do any more work with you until you're ready to let go of this stuff and go deep into your body to the core of what needs healing. And I didn't understand because I was showing up for the sessions. So I was like, I don't know what more I can do. And now, as a therapist, as a healer, I understand that so much more deeply, because I was showing up physically, but I wouldn't let go and trust her and trust myself in the process enough to dig deep into the pain. I just wasn't ready. And I think a year or two after something like that happens to you, especially at that age, I wasn't ready, and I couldn't really have expected myself to have been ready. But theta healing was fantastic. And then I don't think I ever did group work. I had a few sessions with a psychiatrist when I was diagnosed with PTSD. I was prescribed medication for a while when I was still in the very early stages of really needing something to buffer crisis from my life. I was on an antipsychotic to prevent panic attacks, prevent flashbacks, basically anything that had that part of your brain flashing. And that was really useful because it did give me kind of a filter for those really traumatic memories and emotions, so that I could get back onto a stable footing and have a breather, and then I could come off the medication and work on my stuff when I was actually mentally and emotionally ready to go there again. I had matrix re-imprinting therapy and
That
EFT.
you have to tell me what that is. I've not heard of that.
So again, I will not be able to explain it very well because I only had one session of it.
Okay.
I believe it's very similar to EFT. I'll describe the way it worked for me as opposed to describing how it works, because honestly I don't know. I was taken back to my trauma, but I was not in my body, I was outside of my body. And I was safe, and I was allowed to bring anyone who would make me feel safe and strong with me. And I could pause the event at any time that I wanted, and we chose to pause it before my trauma happened, directly before, and I could invite a man that represented divine masculinity and strength and love and compassion and protection into that scenario, and he took my rapist away, and it was like away into another room, into another space, and they had a conversation, and I don't know what that conversation was, and it sounds really strange.
But
and
you know what it does? So it's matrix timeline therapy. Is that what you said?
Matrix re-imprinting.
Re-imprinting, sorry. Because the reason timeline came in is it just reminds me of other practices or other exercises where you can almost go back to certain points in your life. Like, for instance, one that I remember it with is if you've had, not the easiest of childhood, or there was always an issue around money or something like that, you can then go back to a certain point and then decide that that's not your story anymore, and then redo the thing. So that's where I got the timeline thing from. So matrix reprinting therapy. Re-imprinting therapy. Yeah, I get it. It makes perfect sense. Yeah.
And I wanted to train in whatever this magic weird thing that I did when I was like 16 is. And the woman who teaches it, we've never been able to quite gel. It's never been the right time. I've been doing things when she's been training, or when I've been ready, she's been like having a year off. It's always not quite worked, which is fine. I'm sure I will get there eventually. That's why I did the EFT training, and I do see a lot of similarities between that and the clinical hypnotherapy. You can do very similar things with hypnotherapy, and that's why I think it's so powerful, because it's about rewriting your story, like you just said, choosing to have a different story. So even though it doesn't necessarily logically make sense when I describe this weird scenario, it was very healing and empowering, and that was one of the first therapies that I think I had, alternative therapies outside of the NHS. I mean, the real work that I did on myself, the big shifts were self-hypnosis in my own time, healthy, releasing sex with someone I trusted, and someone who understood where I was at and where I was trying to get to. Lots of womb breathing, lots of healing, self-massage, pussy massage, a lot of journaling, a lot of meditation, more self-hypnosis, more EFT, and just in my own time unpacking what was there to unpack, and trusting in my body. That's where that's where all the power has been for me, because all the techniques that really worked required me to trust my body, to step back into my body, to write a new story for myself. And that's where the real power is for me. It's not in this outside stuff.
And it's interesting what you say about, so when you had your therapist, it was a matter of sitting in a room and talking, so you're just kind of reliving the same thing over and over again in the hope that after talking and re-traumatizing yourself, that one day you won't be traumatized anymore.
I mean, I know that talking therapy can be fantastic and is fantastic, and there's definitely a place for it, but I mean, it was conversations like, this thing happened while I was having sex with my boyfriend, and how did that make you feel, and what do you think brought that on, and what do you think you could do to fix it, and how have you been otherwise, and let's go back to that moment, and how does that make you feel? And I was just like, why? No, go away. I don't like it.
It's like you want to keep swatting something. Yeah, I can see that. But yeah, and even when you talked about EFT as well, because I know for a long time with me, when I was like discovering EFT and trying to use it, I just never got it. I'm like, I don't know, I don't get this thing. I don't understand how it works. And then during the last year, when I was doing the Immense Grace programming, I was telling you about, one of the meditations that we did was a 31-minute a day, called Jupiter Finger meditation, where you would just, that's your Jupiter finger. And it was literally, you were just going and tap, not even tapping, but you were just doing the mantra Satanama, and at each point going here and to the other side as well. And that was about releasing trauma. So it was here, nose, under the eye, and here, third eye point. And at certain points as well,
recalibrating the left and right hemispheres of the brain as well.
Yeah, it was a really powerful one as well. And there were times where there would be the points under my eyes, because I was never like hitting them hard, but certain times where it would actually be quite tender. Yeah. Under those areas as well. But it was then after I I'm like, oh, okay, that's where that little bit comes from. Because it took me a while I was just like, I don't understand what tapping is about. But now I don't know. I think at the time that I was kind of delving into it, it wasn't the time that it was right for me.
And I think that's true. Like, I think certain therapies will come into our consciousness before we're actually ready to use them, or at a time when we're just not going to find them helpful. And that's why I've made the effort to train in as many therapies and find as many tools that I can use as possible, because they've all been useful for me or for someone I know at some point, but not necessarily all at once, or not necessarily for everyone all the time. So I really it's kind of like having a really full spices cupboard.
Yeah, I was going to say smorgasbord.
Yeah. No matter what my partner brings home, I will be able to cook something with it, because spices cupboard. It's a terrible analogy, but
it's a good, it's a good one. Yeah, because I suppose as well, if you have different women coming to you, you know that you'll be able to ascertain who is going to be more receptive to a certain modality over another one. Or do you kind of mix the spices, as it were, to use your phrasing?
It does depend completely on the person.
Mm-hmm.
It depends completely on who they are, where they're at, how they think, what their belief system is. For some people, there are some tools that are just going to be a bit too woo-woo, a bit too out there for them. They're not going to resonate. It's going to feel like a waste of time. And for other people, really traditional science-based therapies are not going to feel deep enough for where they're at, and they will need something that is more in depth, more, I guess, like psychedelic, and
Mm.
and they all have their place, but it's just finding out which technique speaks to that person's subconscious mind and that person's soul the most.
Mm. And how do you do your therapies now? Are you one-to-one? Are you a group? How are you working?
It's all one-to-one at the moment.
Mm.
The program I am currently promoting is called Body Reclamation. You remember because you came and spoke to me
Yeah,
at the time.
absolutely.
And it's 3 months of one-on-one therapy. Well, it's one-on-one coaching with therapeutic techniques used, but I don't, as a general rule of thumb, practice therapy during the time we spend together. I'll help someone understand how to use these tools for themselves, and then they can use them in their own time, and we can kind of see where they're at, see how that's working for them, and adjust as and when it's necessary. So that's the main way that I work at the moment.
And you say you don't do, you only do one-to-one, you don't do groups. Do you see the benefits of groups? So is it just because you don't do them, or do you think there's a benefit in a group of women who've been through that situation coming together?
Yeah, completely. I think group work is incredibly powerful. I've done, in the last year or so actually, I've done some amazing group work. I hadn't before, but that's probably just because it wasn't the right group or the right time, or just it wasn't really something that was coming into my hemisphere. But I think group therapy is really powerful. I think you have to have really mastered working with people as individuals and working in very small groups before you can hold space for the healing of a larger group of people. And I also feel like some people benefit from group work more than they benefit from one-on-one work, and other people benefit from one-on-one work more than they benefit from group work. They're kind of different spaces. Sometimes being surrounded by, I say women because this kind of work, I would say, is generally like women's circles. That's the kind of group work you're doing. Being surrounded by women who are all doing their own healing work, you get to borrow benefits. I don't know if you've heard that phrase before. It's where multiple people are having therapy done on them in the same environment, and you borrow the benefits of the person near you who's also experiencing healing. So you kind of, the healing and the shifting of emotional rubble has a knock-on effect through all the people in the room. So even the therapist will get a benefit from the healing of the person they're working on. It's really incredible, especially when you're training. You really see this in action. But so I think healing in a group can be really amazing. For me, I don't feel, I need a very stillness of space to get deep and do the really deep work that sexual trauma release needs. And I think sometimes you can take on, because you're in a very vulnerable space, it's easy to take on the energy of the people around you and be easily affected by the energy of those near you. And so if you've got 10 women in a room or 8 women in a room that are all working on healing and shifting sexual trauma, they're all going to be in very different spaces, experiencing different shifts. And I would say, at least in my experience, it would be hard to give them all the attention that shifting would need. But equally, we are all responsible and capable of healing, and the healing comes from within us, not without us. So maybe in a group setting, there is a power in being responsible for moving through that yourself without having someone giving you individual attention all the time.
I'm just thinking back, because I did workshops before where I held the workshops, and there can be the tendency for one person to kind of dominate the space with their, and it's not that they're any less needing of attention than anyone else. Sometimes, you know, they could be equally or more, if there's such a thing. But then there comes a point where you're trying to kind of equally share the time and give everyone as much room and space in order to kind of say and voice, and there'll usually always be one person that has that kind of confidence to kind of do, or maybe it's the only place that they have in their entire life where they can actually be heard, and they're just like grabbing the moment and not realizing that they're being to other people the person that they probably are in their own. I know it's an interesting kind of space, that but it needs someone to hold it, really kind of marshal the time and the space in a way that no one gets hurt by feeling that they're being not heard or not taken or not appreciated. Yeah,
I think definitely, like, in these situations, the experience that you have is absolutely the experience you're meant to have, and the experience that will promote the best healing within you at that time. And I think it's kind of like therapy and just life, I guess. There's not one, neither one is better or worse. It's just different, and one will be better for someone and worse for someone else. And some people find working in a strip club super healing, and some people find going and living in a nunnery and becoming a nun to be this transformational spiritual experience. And some people love poly relationships, and some people are nourished by monogamy. And it's just, I don't think there's a better or worse. It's just what nourishes an individual.
And what would you say to somebody, given your experience, if you're a friend or a sister or a mother, and somebody that you know has just experienced, either maybe they've just experienced a trauma, or maybe they've just actually opened up about a trauma, that it could be something that's happened a while back and now they feel able to kind of share with you. What, from your experience, what would you have liked to have heard? What do you think is helpful for someone who has actually taken that courageous step to go, do you know what, this has happened to me? What's the best thing that anyone can do? Because obviously when someone says that, you're going to be in, you know, you're going to be shocked, you're going to be hurt, and then you want to help, but you want to be able to say or do things that are not going to then close them down or make them feel that you're kind of like almost apportioning blame by asking the wrong questions even. What do you think can be said or done to be supportive?
I think it's really important to tell, I don't like the word survivor, tell someone who's experienced a sexual trauma that it was not their fault. It could never have been their fault. They could not have done anything to deserve experiencing that. And they could not have done anything to deserve having that experience, and they could not have done anything differently in that moment. That they did the best they could, and however they responded to that assault of their power, of their body, of the ownership of themselves, was the perfect way to respond to that experience in that moment. I think that's really important. And I think being there to hear them and asking for them to talk to you, asking how they're feeling, asking how it's affecting them, because there can be a real shutdown of communication, and because you feel so much shame and almost like you just don't deserve to take up any space in the world at the time. People will say, I'm here if you want to talk, but you actually need someone to really sit down and be like, I am present to listen to you, because you're not going to go up to someone and say, hi, I'm ready to talk about my rape now, let's have a chat. That's not something you do. And you don't, it's not like you think anyone wants to hear that. No one wants that conversation in your mind. So it's really important, as someone supporting someone who's experienced that you reiterate that you are there to listen when they're ready to speak, and give them time to process. But maybe after a month or two, you say to them, hey, how is this affecting you? Is there anything I can do to help? Do you need more support? What do you need from me? What do you need from the people around you? Really inviting in that communication. And there's a difference between being pushy and kind of just opening door and inviting in that openness and that conversation. And I think it's really important that people know that you do heal, you do recover, you do find your way back to your body, you will feel joyful again, you will feel sexually vibrant again, you will have fantastic, mind-blowing, sexy orgasms in various positions up against walls and with plants flying around. Like, that is somewhere you will get to. It feels really far away and maybe even impossible, but that's the standard you should set for yourself, because you deserve that. And I was told that you never heal from rape, you just learn how to cope better. And it is my executive opinion now that is absolute bullshit. I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I would say.
That's perfect. Yeah, like it's that healing is just it kind of learning to live with that wound all the time as well. But you're just saying there's a point where it's just like you're liberated from it.
Yeah. There is a point at which it stops being a wound, and it stops being coping, and it stops being surviving, and you suddenly feel safe in your body again, and you feel in your power, and you feel capable and strong. You don't need protecting from anything. You have it all within you. It's like, like you were saying earlier, I am sovereign. And when you're sovereign, you have nothing to fear. Nothing can touch you. And anything that does try to come into your space, you can completely control and react perfectly to.
And I'm trying to work out how to phrase this question. I'm thinking of, for women who have never experienced any kind of trauma at all, because sometimes they might feel an ease around women who've experienced trauma, whether they feel like, I don't know, they've not experienced the nth of it because they've never been through that. How can they're an example of almost like a purity. Do you know what's in my mind?
Like
You get it.
To that.
Yeah.
So like, how would they support someone who'd experienced that?
Yeah.
So do you mean like in relation to people who haven't experienced trauma, how can they support someone who has, or how can they? I mean, that's such an interesting question, and it has so many layers to it. I think often when you speak out about something that's happened to you, it invites people around you to speak out as well. And you become this person that people feel comfortable opening up to. So I have this conversation with my partner sometimes, and he says, nobody I know has had this happen to them. And I'm like, you are a straight middle-class white man. How many women are going to open up to you about their sexual trauma, dude? Literally zero, except me, and only because we're having sex and we love each other. Like, I think when we have a commonality, we invite people to feel safe speaking to us about something. So I mean, obviously you can't say for sure, but I think often you'll have women who haven't experienced something like that will believe that no one they know has experienced that, but almost certainly a few of those people that they know have, and that woman is just not necessarily on their radar as someone that they can talk to about it or want to talk to about it, or even just they don't talk about it because they don't want to. So, and it's really interesting. I think there's almost, I look back to a time when I was that person. You have this idea in your head of how you would deal with violence, and there's almost like a smugness, like I would deal with it like this. Obviously, this is obvious. Why does no one else deal with it like this? And it is like a naivety. You don't know how the fight, flight, or freeze response affects your brain. You don't know how you're going to deal with fear and confusion and pain and betrayal in that moment. I think, I mean, I really like, so have you heard of Betty White?
No.
And the Wheel of Consent?
No, I haven't.
So I only came across her work very recently. I realised I'd been using it for a while, but I didn't know who it was who'd started it or what. You know when you use a tool for ages, but it's been passed down through books and people speaking and teachers picking it up and trainers and therapists. So I've been using it for a while. She basically teaches learning how to give and receive touch and take, and how to give touch, receive touch, and how to take touch and allow someone to take touch. And I experienced this during a women's circle workshop. It was basically an exercise where you are paired up and you practice having someone touch you in a non-sexual way, or move to touch you, and you say no every time they move to touch you. And then eventually, as you feel comfortable, you can say yes to some touches, whether it's a stroke on the arm or having your hair stroked or your chin tickled, or whatever it is. And then you swap round. So you practice giving or taking touch. You practice taking touch, and then you sit down and you ask for certain kinds of touch. So you'll be like, I would like you to touch my arm like this, and they do that, and then they do the same with you. And then you say, I would like to touch your arm like this. Maybe like, I would like to run my fingers really lightly over your arm so I can feel the hairs tickling my fingers, or I'd like to pinch your knuckles and squeeze the skin between my fingers, something like that. And you say yes, and then you practice letting someone touch you for their own pleasure. And it was really powerful because you just get this really good feeling for your boundaries, for what is a yes in your body, what's a no in your body. And I'm not describing it properly right now, which is weird because I use it a huge amount. But it's a really powerful little exercise to get to know how you feel asking for touch and giving touch and receiving touch and saying yes or no to certain kinds of touch from other people. And I feel like we can go into a lot of sexual or just intimate circumstances kind of going along with whatever's happening, and not realize until it's too late that it wasn't something that you were enthusiastically wanting to happen. And I'm not describing an assault or a lack of consent there. I'm describing when you're with your partner and you have sex a lot, but you're kind of like, maybe I'm in the mood, maybe I'm not, we have sex all the time, let's just see what happens. And then you find yourself, the no becomes louder in your body as things progress. And some people don't listen to that no and don't express that they are feeling that unease to their partner. And it kind of stops either party from being able to make it a positive experience or change it around. And I think people who have never experienced a trauma are unlikely to enter into the kind of environment where they're going to learn skills like that. So if they're in a position where they're with someone who's not necessarily, it might be a partner or a friend or just someone they've started dating, and you're kind of playing around with like, do we, don't we, like, is this what I want? Maybe he's kind of cute but also really bad at kissing, but also he has nice cologne on and I like the way he smells. Like, when you're like, it's a maybe in your body and it starts becoming a no, is at that point where you really need the skills to be able to listen to how that feels and step back, and if necessary be like, dude, back off, like, and potentially not be very nice. And I think looking back, I've had experiences in my life where it was definitely not consensual and I definitely didn't use my voice enough. And that is a really hard thing to say. And the last thing I could possibly be intending with that sentence is to victim blame anyone, least of all myself. But I could have really spoken my no, but I left it and I let it be I kind of just like
it's the confidence, and I'm sure like more women than not will have that situation, because I think you go on that date and then you have that obligatory coffee and then you just want it to be that, really, and get a cab, and it just isn't. But it's not having the power in your no. Yeah, the confidence in knowing how to say your no as well. And I think that's, we're, like I say, I think more women than not would have been through that, especially in your younger years where you're just kind of like dating and things like that. And there was, I think, I don't even remember that, there was an actor, an Asian guy, but he in America, where one of his ex-dates had kind of come out and put something online with a situation where she'd had that.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and then but it kind of, the timing of it was really bad for him because it was just like it was just in the middle of all of that.
I remember, and my partner and I both read the article that she put up and had a few conversations, in bed conversations in the morning over a cup of tea, kind of like, what's this bringing up for you? And I mean, the general consensus was that he acted in a deeply douchey manner, that he should have heard the signals, that he, like, that was not a consensual experience. And I mean, the woman has come forward and said it did not feel like a consensual experience, so at least on her part, that is what the experience was. But it just brought up so much stuff, like the lack of education we have about healthy relationships, how men are kind of taught to get laid and like chase tail and like
hit it.
Yeah, hit it.
Just like awful, yeah.
And it was definitely not an okay situation. And I feel like it's just one of those things where some men are kind of going, well, I'm not that kind of man because she wasn't screaming and crying and yelling. And there is a responsibility to stay aware of your partner and her or his body language and put your needs below the needs of the person you're with feeling comfortable and safe and respected. And there's also a responsibility on everyone's part to communicate effectively, have conversations about what they want, what they don't want, and be really clear about how they're feeling and protect their space if it's necessary. And unfortunately, that's not really something we can expect from women at the moment, because we just haven't been given any toolkit with which to feel able to do that.
Or even men as well. I think I don't even know what the, you know, having not been a man in this lifetime, what their thought process is really, because it just seems a lot of the time it's just this unconscious maneuver that they've learnt from the movies, that it kind of this happens, this like kind of routine. Yeah.
Woman, like, how dare you, like, endanger us both, and then he like pushes her up against the wall and is like, I'm a man, and she's like, piss off, and he's like, I'm gonna kiss you now, and she slaps him, and then he kisses her, and then they have sex, and
she surrenders. Like, yeah, it's like,
that is rapey as fuck. In real life, that scenario is deeply not okay, but for some reason it's all right when it's in a movie that was made 20 years ago. But those are the movies that men have grown up with.
No,
that's masculinity and sexuality that a lot of, not just men, but everyone has grown up with. You know? Like, I had a girl, I remember when I was dancing really vividly, a girl in the changing room saying, God, I feel so sorry. Like, I worry for my kids now. I worry for my son, because what if, you know, he goes to prom and he goes to kiss a girl and she files a report of sexual assault on him. And I'm just like, that is not how this works. But then another girl pipes up and is like, I just think that's so unsexy, don't you? I think it's so unsexy when guys ask for permission to kiss you. Like, I want to be grabbed, thrown against the wall and kissed. And I was just sat there thinking, like, that's great. So tell him, and then you can get grabbed and thrown up against walls and kissed for the rest of your life, happily. That only takes one conversation to initiate millions of up against the wall kisses. Like, for the sake of consent, let's just have that one conversation. But we're like, these are the things we're not okay with, and these are the things we are okay with.
And I think and asking permission is quite nice though, really, you know. It's like, it's
really sexy.
Yeah.
I love it if it's like, I really want to kiss you now. I'm just like, oh, okay then, maybe you should.
Yeah.
You know?
It's
like,
sweet.
I think so. And like, you can always say to someone, you know, I like it when you take a bit of control, or I like it when you're more dominant. I like to be grabbed, and that's fine. That's a conversation. Like, as a feminist, I aspire for every woman to be able to have that conversation. You know, say what you want, and it doesn't have to be super consensual. It can be fun and sexy, but it just needs that conversation first of saying, this is something I am okay with, and I might not be later on, so my safe word is marshmallow.
Perfect. That's who we want. Safe words for a safe world. Imagine that.
Exactly. I'm all about words.
So let me ask you some of the other questions as well.
Yeah.
So
I feel like we've gone on semi-tangents.
Yeah, but I like it like that. I told you, that's why I don't really do questions. I kind of do, but I don't, you know. And I'm always like scribbling down odd words on the side so that I know where my mind needs to go. So the first question is, what is the best piece of advice a woman has ever given to you?
Ooh, so this is actually really hard for me, because obviously I instantly thought about my mum and my parents, and my mum is always giving me amazing advice. It's always in the moment, so I take it, I use it, and then I forget it instantly. But I think the best advice my mother's ever given me was let go and let God, or pray on it, like both of those. And I'm not a religious person at all. I don't think my mum's particularly religious anymore. But one of the first books she ever gave me was A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. Have you read that?
I've not read that book, but funny enough, I was listening to her this morning actually. She's got like a podcast series on Audible, so I was listening to interesting chat. But that's going to take us on another tangent. So stay with you. Yeah.
So she gave me that book, and it's just instilling in me this trust in the power of surrendering to the universe, surrendering to love, and trusting that you can just ride it out and wherever you end up will be okay. And that the universe will never give you more than you can handle.
That's the best one.
Yeah.
And which woman do you think represents higher energetic resonance?
I feel like Gabrielle Bernstein. I don't know if you've heard of her.
Yeah.
When I see her talking on stage, she just lights everything up. Like, she just glows, and she's so tuned in and tapped in and turned on. She just lights everything up. So yeah.
Perfect. And what's your favorite self-care ritual, self-care practice?
My favorite self-care practice for myself is super unholistic. It's meal prepping wholesome food for myself at the beginning of the week so that I have enough time and energy and I don't make myself a fish finger sandwich.
Do you do that for the whole week?
So I meal prep on a Sunday, and I meal prep breakfasts and lunches, and then usually I'll make myself something fresh in the afternoon for dinner, but that will be meal prep for the dinner for the next day as well. So it kind of...
That's super organized. Do you know, because I see people do it and I think that's organized, but then my taste buds and my desires change on a daily basis. So like some days I'll wake up and I'm like, I want avocado toast today. Other days as I want a smoothie. I can see the thought process behind it, and I can see why it works. And also, but I just know that on a day-to-day basis I want a different thing at a different time. I wish I could, maybe I'll try it for a week, but
that's why
I just think I'd just be like, oh my god, it's Thursday and I'm still eating that Monday stuff. It would drive me nuts.
But we'll have weekends off, so we can eat whatever we want on the weekend. But
Yeah.
also it's nice because I don't have to make any decisions. I don't have to wash up. I know I'm going to eat something nutritious and healthy. I'm going to have energy all day. And it just takes off a layer of like worry and stress. I can just get my food out of the fridge and get to work. But my favorite self-care ritual in general that I advise everyone does forever and always is self-healing pussy massages. Because I think it's the best way to reconnect with yourself, your body, and get right to the core of who you are and start unpacking trauma without needing anyone else around.
And do you lead classes in that, or do you intend to? Or
maybe. I feel like there are a lot of people who are already doing that really wonderfully. And it's one of many tools that I use. I do teach people, I mean, it's not like rocket science. It's a vagina.
But actually, no, it is rocket science by the looks of it.
It's something I recommend people try, and I don't think there is a right or wrong way to do it because it's your body at the end of the day. You know, your body knows best, and I love it as a practice because it's about tuning into what your body wants and what your body is saying, what your body is asking for. So there's not really a right or wrong way to do it, you know what I mean? Don't use Vaseline. Don't use Vaseline or like
Vaseline's just like horrible anyway. it's just
baby oil, all bad.
Yeah,
but,
horrible things. Coconut oil.
I have a article on it that goes into a lot of detail on my website, so I can direct people there if they want like an in-depth step-by-step walkthrough. And I think I might do an audio that people can download to use for pussy massage at some point. But it is something, there are a lot of amazing people who already have those things available. And I like to just do my one thing well, and with things like that be like, try this person's book or this person's YouTube. I don't need to do everything myself. So
Perfect. And so what's next? What's coming up in the future for you?
Yeah, so I think at the moment, my goal for this year was to have really started treating this work that I do like a full-time 9-to-5 business, because I've been doing it for a couple of years, but I hadn't given it the full attention it deserved. And I've done that now, and it is like a full-time 9-to-5 business, and it's going amazingly. And now I'm kind of in this space where I'm like just open to doors opening, and I've got a few speaking and facilitating gigs at festivals and events in the next 12 months. I'll be at Barefoot Festival next month, which is really exciting.
Good for you.
But I think like the next thing that I really want to do this year is to start writing my book and like commit to a practice of every day, an hour, 2 hours, just hammer it out, because I've been talking about it for so long and I've always let it become like a number 2 priority.
Go for it, because honestly, I've been writing a book for too long now. I've written a short one that's like on Amazon, but it's to write the
book.
Like the book that the whole her conversations is about anyway. So it was one of the reasons that one of the things that really prompted me to get her conversations going anyway was to kind of just like put the fire under the whole her idea, because this book has been like, I write it and then I come back to it, and because I evolve anyway, it kind of it's shifting. And the thing with anything, like I've done a lot of music in the past as well, is then when you listen to something that you recorded a while back, then you're still tweaking it, but it exists as its form, and you have to just like kind of allow it to be, because people are just going to meet it as it exists, as opposed to you going, well, if I had the chance to go and re-edit this again. They don't want to know that, so I need to just commit it to what it is now and make the whole right to becoming her, which is about me getting to my higher energetic resonance and all the tools and the things and the journeys and what I've been through that got me to that point, that is all part of what's birthed this as well. So yeah, it's a book that exists in like Evernote chapters on all of my devices. Evernote's brilliant to write on. I just need to pull it together. But yeah, go for it, because I need to get back and commit to like say like a daily hour of getting it done. It'll be done in no time because I've got so much on it.
Exactly. And I mean, I was writing an article recently for lovehoney.com. I don't know if you've heard of them.
No.
They're a sex toy website. They call themselves the Sexual Happiness People.
Cool.
And they asked me to write an article on sexual happiness after trauma. And it was like, it took me so long to write, but I kept rewriting it and new things were popping into my head, and it ended up becoming 3 articles, and I had to choose which one I was going to send them. I was writing like 800 to 900,000.
That's a book.
Yeah, 800 to 900 words a day. And it took me maybe like an hour to do that. And I was like, this is effort, but if I did this every day, that would be like a book, like pumped out, like instantly. I could have a book done in 6 months, which is crazy. So I need to commit to that practice.
Yeah, you and me both. So, and just where can everyone find you and all your fantastic work?
So I have a website called estherdelaford.com. And that's where you can go to find out about my services, how I work with people, and book discovery calls, which are free, to find out more about it if that's something that people are interested in. And if you just want to stay in touch and keep an eye on stuff, my Facebook page is Esther De Al Ford Coaching, and that's where I put information about articles coming up, podcasts, and just anything else that I'm creating or offering.
That's perfect. And that's it. And I just want to say thank you, Esther, for coming on and going with me, just turning up at some Mind, Body, Spirit Festival, going, come and speak on my podcast. You don't know who I am, but let me do this thing. And I really appreciate it. It's women like you who are doing work that is just so amazing, that is inspiring me. And it just like makes the whole idea that I had, it's just like, it needs the energy and the input and the dreams of other women to actually move it forward and for it to become what I have still brewing up in here, but it just seems to be becoming more and more real every time I speak to someone amazing like yourself. So I want to say thank you for taking time today.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me and pouncing on me at the festival. It's been so gorgeous to get to know you and gorgeous to be here and chat. Yeah, it's been really lovely. Thank you.
Fabulous.
Thank you, Esther, for joining me for another episode of Her Conversations, and thank you to you, the listener, for listening in on another episode. It's one of those subjects that needs to be discussed but is sometimes very difficult and triggering for many people. It can bring up a lot of unresolved issues and a lot of hurt and hidden pain. Please feel free to share this episode and also open up the conversation with friends, sisters, daughters, anyone within your circle that you feel you can trust and open up to. If you'd like to find out more about me, my name is Carol May Whittick and my website is carolmaywhittick.com. That's CarolMaewhittick. What I've also started to do on the website is there's a new point called Her Connections, which if you go to the search area of that and just put in any keywords, you'll find previous episodes from women who've spoken to me on Her Conversations that may be able to serve you if there's an issue that you're going through or if there's just a point of interest. Anyway, until the next week and the next episode, see you then. Thank you.